Yeah, sure. So my name is Stephen Reid, and well, what do I say about myself? I just pulled up my own website to help me with this. Yeah, I'm a facilitator, coach, and Ruby and Python developer. I've trained in the fields of complexity science, physics, transformative coaching, meditation, plant medicine, and some of the current projects I'm involved with include working with Supermodular, who was started by Kevin Iwaki, who's behind Gitcoin, the Web3 project that allows people to fund projects through quadratic funding. I'm doing some work with them on the meta crisis. I'm hosting an upcoming residency called Futurecraft. I'm currently studying for a professional certificate in machine learning and artificial intelligence with UC Berkeley. I lead the development of Dandelion web platform for regenerative events and co-created gatherings. That's part of Dandelion Collective, which is a not-for-profit worker cooperative, and some other things. But I guess probably my most significant previous engagement was founding the Psychedelic Society, which now has something like 75,000 or so subscribers and is one of the largest producers of alternative events in the UK. We don't actually currently do anything involving psychedelics themselves. We did for a time run psychedelic retreats in the Netherlands. We now just signpost people to such things, but yeah, there's still a lot going on under that banner. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be speaking to this intimate life itself audience today. Okay, well, I guess you want me to just go for it then. So the title was Future Dissonance, and I on one hand I have been reading a string of books. The ones that I mentioned in that in the blurb for this event were Hospicing Modernity by Vanessa Machado, At Work in the Ruins by Dougald Hine, Post-Capitalist Philanthropy by Alan Lauder and Lynn Murphy. But yeah, I think they all reference each other actually, and that probably can't quite be true because presumably one was released first, but certainly they have there's a common line of thinking here, that modernity, as Vanessa would call it, is coming to an end. That the civilization as we know it, life as we know it, capitalism as we know it, cannot last. We are reaching various tipping points, breaking points, both at an economic and ecological level, such that life is going to change dramatically over the coming years, and that's very likely going to look like a much lower power and lower tech future. And in that context, Vanessa would suggest we have a lot to learn from indigenous peoples that have already been living in this way, often kind of forced to live in this way. In some contexts, you might say, by choice, but so one way or another have been living in this lower power, lower tech way that's much closer to nature for years, if not generations, at this point. And Alan Lauder and Lynn Murphy would actually say that they're already living post-capitalist futures. Alan and Lynn deliberately don't put a dash between post and capitalist in their post-capitalism, to suggest that, and by that they want to suggest that post-capitalism is not something that simply comes after capitalism in a temporal sense, when capitalism, as a kind of global phenomenon, collapses, but actually there are already communities that are living in post-capitalist ways, that are living outside and beyond of capitalism, sometimes out of choice and sometimes by necessity. And actually the communities that are doing that, have learned to do that, are going to be extremely important to pay attention to over the coming years as things fall apart, or at least it becomes a necessity to find very different ways of living and working and loving and being over the coming decades. So there's so the third book, At Work in the Ruins by Dougald Hine. One of the images he talks about this this motorway of progress, and this highway, if we could say, for the US audience, where for the last decades has involved fossil fuels and neoliberal capitalism, and this the idea that a rising tide lifts all boats, and it doesn't matter as if the richest are getting like super rich, as long as like the poorest people are, you know, getting a few extra crumbs now and then. But now he says that the highway now is shifting. The highway now is the Green New Deal, is green capitalism, and we're not going to be, you know, we're going to get fossil fuels, but you know, everything, there's going to be solar panels everywhere, and we're all going to be driving Teslas, and but like he sort of suggests there's still this kind of monolithic vision for the future, this highway into this this green capitalist future, and he doesn't buy it. Basically, he thinks that like the age of there being a highway of any sort, whether it's the kind of like neoliberal fossil fueled one, or whether it's something kind of a bit greener and shinier, just won't stand anymore. And instead, he suggests that rather than the highway, it's time to notice that there are branching paths into the forest, and instead it's we have the opportunity to start walking those. And in that sense, there is a way forward. In fact, well, there's not just a way. There are many ways forwards in the context of the climate crisis, the wider ecological crisis, and so on. Even if there's not just like this one vision that can be really even understood by everyone in the same way, much less enjoyed by everybody. So I find the body of work that those authors are producing very compelling, and I think it has lots to recommend it. I think I'm convinced that we have already like crossed the various ecological boundaries in a critical way, and that the idea that, like, you know, we've still got 1 or 5 or 10 or 20 years to like sort out the climate crisis, and which, you know, take your pick of whichever other ecological problem is barely realistic. Is that very probably we've already kind of like locked in the warming and locked in damage in various other ways, and we're now going to be experiencing the consequences of that, rather than it being something in the future that we still, you know, like can motivate ourselves to prevent or to stop. Now, and so in some ways that can be scary, and that and in others we could say like it doesn't have to be. Like there's or at least we can put it like this, that there's a lot that's scary about neoliberal capitalism, as we know. There's a lot that's like not working for the majority of the world's population under the current system. So the fact that system is dying, that we are entering an age of hospicing modernity, as Vanessa would say, it possibly presents opportunities at the very least, like to do things differently, even if in many contexts like it is going to be more difficult to operate in. At least there's some kind of, there's a crack, there's an opening, there's a time when, yeah, we could shake things up and do things differently. And in that way, then, hello, welcome here. And in that way, I share that hope, that despite the context being tougher, there might be opportunities for really focusing on what matters, and realizing that there's a lot of what we've been told that we need under the current economic paradigm that actually we don't need, and like isn't truly contributing to our well-being at a fundamental level. And indeed there might be the very fact that we are having to go through significant challenges with people in our local areas, in our communities, that enables us to discover that it is precisely that. It is precisely like coming together as communities and moving through challenge that actually presents some of the most important and nourishing and fulfilling work play that we can possibly do in life. So that's all there. King, you just missed me sort of describe the thinking about Work at the Ruins by Dougald Hine, Post-Capitalist Philanthropy by Eleanor Ludher and Lynn Murphy, and what's Hospicing Modernity by Vanessa Machado. And I'm interested in making some of the links between that body of work. You caught the end of it, so you get a little flavor there. And then I switched to the kind of this other perspective that or set of perspectives that I see around artificial intelligence, most notably, and slightly more generally, the possibility for technology to radically alter if you speak to a certain person, they'll say, radically alter in positive ways the way that we live and we work and so on. And I see that there's whether it's radically better is, I think the jury is slightly out, but one way or another I see like it's particularly what's going on in AI is likely to radically change the world as we know it, and that there's a lot of signal, there's a lot of truth here. Who here has played with GPT, ChatGPT, GPT-4? Yeah, okay, great. So I mean, and actually, how have you actually experienced a difference between ChatGPT and GPT-4? Not everyone has been invited into GPT-4 yet, but like the difference is pretty remarkable. Like if you thought 3.5 was good, like 4 is really another level of smart. And you might have seen these stats showing that like GPT-4 can pass basically any university level exam in like the 90th percentile or above. The pace at which this technology is improving has surprised basically everyone, I think. And I think that's we could also talk about what's happening with images and video. You might have also played with Midjourney. Midjourney have their Midjourney V5, which produces like photorealistic images that are basically, you just can't tell them apart from actual like professional photography. And not to mention being able to like trivially generate various like computer graphics and vector art and so on that would previously have taken designers or illustrators days, if not weeks, to produce. There's the next a couple of things on the horizon in the space of AI. One is video. So we're rapidly getting to a point where you can just write into the kind of summary of a movie plot line, and then a large language model will turn your summary of the plot line into like a full movie script, and then you can pass that movie script to an AI video generator that will render the entire movie. And which it's I mean, and I think there's no doubt that I'm hugely excited about this in lots of ways. The possibility of it democratizing like media production, or if you like, or more importantly, I'll say democratizing storytelling. And you've all read a little bit about like the importance of storytelling and narratives in this day and age. And there's a barrier there in just in terms of like the technical capacity required and the cost and so on. That's rapidly diminishing, which I think is in most ways I can see it a good thing. So the other, and just to mention one more thing, like the other thing that I think we'll be hearing a lot more of over the next months are AI or autonomous agents. So these are you may have seen that OpenAI released a plugin system for ChatGPT. So not only can you just chat to it, but like you can like hook in the simplest case like Google searches, and in the more advanced case things like top table, like that can actually book dinner tables for you, or like or the biggest one is like Zapier, which is basically has APIs to more or less every major web service. And so you can not only can you just get advice from ChatGPT, you can say to ChatGPT, like, here's my credit card, like book me a 2-week holiday in this part of the world, and it will go and actually find the best flights, book the flights, book the restaurants, like buy you tickets to all of the attractions. And maybe that's a bit of a trivial example. The other thing that people are looking into is, okay, GPT, make me $1 million. It's basically as simple as that. And ChatGPT will start, will kind of say, okay, what are the best ways, or the easiest ways of generating a large amount of money in a short time? And it might, what it often seems to come up with is affiliate schemes and so on. So then GPT will kind of like learn about affiliate marketing schemes. It will build the website, and now with this new plugin system, it can actually deploy the website itself. And so AI agents, not simply as chatbots, but as actual workers, I think is going to be a very strange new frontier. Might also mention that a lot of people are quite worried about this technology, as you probably have also heard. The potential for AI to recursively self-improve means that many people are saying we need to be really, really careful about with the so-called AI alignment problem, to make sure that we have specified as carefully as possible, or carefully enough, what exactly the goals of the AI are, how its ethics, if you like, such that if it does start to improve itself in a way that we find difficult to stop, then at least it's improving itself in a direction that we're happy with. And the classic example that people have probably heard of is the idea of a paperclip maximizer. So the idea that an AI is told to is working for a paperclip company and is told that we want you to produce as many paperclips as possible. And the thought experiment goes that, well, what if this happens, if that AI happens to be the one that figures out how to recursively self-improve with the goal of simply produce as much paperclips as possible, then it's entirely it's entirely reasonable for that, from the AI's point of view, to basically dismantle the entire world and turn it all into paperclips. It's just doing what it was told. You humans, you told me to make paperclips. I'm making paperclips. Like, it's so to as we get closer to the point of this this recursive self-improvement, this articulation of goals becomes extremely important. And there's a lot of people that feel that we don't really know how to do this effectively yet. And a lot more research is actually required before we attempt anything like a self-improving AI. So there is this is another way in which I see that our world is going to become radically different over the coming years. There is there's certainly like a bull case, like an optimistic take. The best case scenario is that the AI basically eliminates toil, that what David Graeber called bullshit jobs, and that the remaining things that humans are doing are all things that they really want to be doing, that we can be freed simply to focus on health and creativity and relationships and so on. Where our basic needs are taken care of through a basic universal basic income, or maybe in combination with universal basic services like universal free quality universal healthcare and transportation and so on. That sounds like a feature that I can get on board with, and it's especially in the context of self-improving AI, like, if we can get a handle on the AI alignment problem, it seems quite possible as well. Like the exponential curves are notoriously difficult to like wrap our heads around, but the essence of an exponential, right, is that the value of the function is the rate of change of the value of the function is proportional to the value itself, and which is it's almost always humans are taken by surprise by exponential curves, but that would be the nature of a self-improving AI and its capabilities to, at best, like improve human lives. So then we come to the nub of it, really. Then it's like, how do we square these two possible futures? How do we square, on one hand, this idea of hospicing modernity, this idea that we're going to be at work in the ruins, and on the other, this seemingly quite real possibility that we will have generally intelligent, if not super intelligent, AIs that at best would be aligned with our needs and desires. And now, is it the case that we're actually heading like towards one and not the other? That that Vanessa and Dougald and so on are kind of are correct with the trajectory that they're plotting, and that this AI stuff is just like a distraction and a nonsense and like a kind of like a blip, and there's no way that you can make a case that, of course, the AI is all powered by like massive amounts of electricity and silicon, and just like you could say, well, there's no chance that we're going to even have that power available and those resources available over the coming decades. So forget about it. Forget about super intelligent AIs making any kind of difference here. Or on the other side, I'm sure you can find AI folks that are like, feel extremely optimistic about the potential for this technology to improve life, and would say people like Dougald and Vanessa are just like doomers, like kind of like just living kind of stuck in some old paradigm that like aren't really awake to like just how dramatically things are changing and how fast technology is moving. And whilst yes, we have major ecological issues, like it's nothing that won't be able to be fixed through these through AI and other technologies that are not just on the horizon, but actually now starting to be deployed. So I think I'll leave it there as a kind of extended introduction and sort of like setting out of the territory. And I'm mainly interested to know from you guys now. It's like where are you at with that? Like, do you see? Are you much more convinced that like we're going to be entering a period of real powering down hospicing modernity, or do you alternatively do you see the real potential in AI and similar technologies? Or is there some strange synthesis of the two? Like, can we imagine some? I called it a superposition in the blurb, didn't I? Where yes, okay, the ecological crisis in particular like really hits that that we get like serious just mass death phenomenon. I don't know if anyone's read Ministry for the Future. This fantastic science fiction book by Kim Stanley Robinson that starts with this like horrifying and detailed description of a critical wet bulb event, which is where the combination of temperature and humidity is above a certain critical value, such that the human body cannot survive more than 6 hours, because your sweat, which usually would cool you, if it's dry heat, can't evaporate into the air because the humidity is too high. And this book opens with imagining that like millions of people in India in this book like simply die over the course of 24 hours, like more, like the greatest number of humans that's ever died in the shortest period of time through just through this combination of temperature and humidity. And like we can barely like hold it in our minds that a possibility of something like that. But there are but it is a possibility for or is that like what is one of our possible futures. And is there some future where like both that kind of thing is happening, and also we have these super intelligent AIs? So yeah, putting it open and out to you guys now for letting me know how you see those two trends intersecting.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, I really love this this conversation, and bringing together these two kind of like pathways that we could venture down, or both of them at the same time. And for me, I definitely sense that we should probably equip ourselves with both, as they both, you know, I think we're in this time of like polarization, and a lot of people are like, oh, AI is bad, or AI is good, or like, oh, we don't want to just go live in the forest, you know. But actually, the best way that we can show up is as a collective is to recognize that both are possible and equip ourselves for both events, depending on which direction that could go. And I think it's interesting, the points about AI and like the power of AI and what that can do. It's kind of like a funny little story. I don't know if you've been to Boomtown, Stephen. I imagine you have. It's in your area. One of the chapters of the Boomtown series. So Boomtown's like a festival in the UK, guys, and they have like this great narrative behind each year is a new chapter in a story. And part of that story was that there was this AI that kind of like took over and kind of created the next chapter in this kind of like dystopian future where AI is in control. And then someone fed it the idea of saving humanity, and eventually AI turns itself off, because it's like, this is the way that humanity will be saved, is by me turning off myself, basically. And I like that idea. But yeah, that would be me in a nutshell. Equipped ourselves with both, moving forward.
Just to say that there's certainly some very good thinkers saying that we should do exactly that now, that they say that there's no safe way of allowing artificial general intelligence, much less super intelligence, and the best thing we can possibly do is just stop all research into AI right now. They exist, yeah. But yeah, Dion and Kinga, curious for your thoughts.
Hello. I don't know where to start, basically. Because this conversation is just such an overwhelmingly big and complex topic that I have to mention that but what we are doing is, of course, sharing some thoughts about this complex thing. But what is interesting for me, because of course, when you think about the foresight, we have so many possible, plausible, and futures, basically. So it's very hard to tell in a linear way it will go this way or another, because it's all the time shifting points between the possible, plausible, and whatever futures that we can imagine. And it's all about the shifts all the time. But it's more, of course, in our more human thinking about the future. But what can we tell about how AI is imagining the future, right? So what is interesting for me is this it's like hard to grasp, especially for me in words, because also English is not my language, so native language. So what is interesting for me is, like, let's say, like, what I think maybe how we are where we are going, what is more the most like efficient, or like a way to basically resist the authoritarian, let's say now capitalistic kind of democratic way of thinking, ideologies and structures and systems of power, right? So the best way for the resistance is a living organism with so many cells, right, that are differentiated, and there is like the contact between each of the cells that are in the super organism, let's say, because we have to, of course, think globally, that are intertwined, interconnected, and basically the only thing is the resistance. It's like in physics, the entropy and the other energy that is. And what is interesting for me in the context of AI, that it's like it's this huge hegemonic, let's say, force that is kind of above us, nobody knows where, and it's also like the substance basically of our thoughts right now, because everybody is talking about the AI. So it's at the same time something that makes this illusion even more that we are like globally connected, one, and the AI is one. But at the same time, we have this something that is that may be useful when thinking about the types of cyber civil disobedience and this type of thinking or like doing, right? Where when we could maybe somehow use the AI for individualistic, or let's say this groups of resistance, right, that would potentially like help each other. Because you said something about that you hope that AI will be aligned with our needs and desire, but what are human needs and human desire? It's also the need and desire for destruction, death, right? So definitely I wouldn't be so hopeful about that. I hope that it's something that AI won't take it, but definitely there is so much of this conversations now coming up about the AIs and they're thinking about the future right now. I don't know if maybe I leave now with this, what I've said, and then maybe we can share about what we think.
Maybe just the working, if you have any, on like the ecological crisis and the potential for like real catastrophe there, and how you see that intersecting with this AI future.
Could you repeat?
So the climate crisis and the ecological crisis, that do you see this as a like a big problem for humanity, something that is also coming up, and what do you see as the intersection between AI and the climate crisis or ecological crisis?
Yeah, so let's say that what I've said about this type of resistance and use of AI on our individualistic or I don't know, groups level, which are resistant to the authoritarian forces of the system, of ideology, of capitalism, let's say, right? So then I see it, because I see resistance on the side of fighting or trying to manage basically somehow the global, not fighting with or trying to make it go away, the climate change, but to. Okay,
so when you say resistance, you're talking about kind of activist resistance. Am I understanding you right?
It's not the type of maybe activism. I think it's just awareness of what's happening, what's going on, and maybe a belief in human awareness of what's happening around them. And I think that basically just awareness on the level of being, and can provide something. And let's say we are all in like different paradigms. Let's say if we are thinking in this hierarchical, let's say, consciousness type of imagining about our global situation as humanity, Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I don't know if it makes sense for you. What do you think
Yeah,
about
lots of it does. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Dion has any thoughts to share.
Oh, I have so many thoughts. I mean, it's obvious. It's a big topic, so I'll just let go of any kind of grand,
or at least two big topics in a way. Yeah.
yeah, I'll let go of any grand synthesis and just be okay with an iterative approach here. But I just took some quick notes. Maybe I'll start with just the things I wrote kind of more recently here. So you asked about the intersection of the ecological crisis and AI. You know, what comes to mind is that so many ways we try to solve problems are maybe just maladapted for the complexity, you know, and scale of the world. You know, we like the phrase, you know, Dunbar number, which Daniel Smachtenberger has mentioned many times, which is that, you know, the human brain isn't really just designed to work in groups larger than like 150 people. I don't, you know, obviously we're all connected with a lot more people than that, so I don't really know.
Could you repeat the last sentence?
So the Dunbar number is a theory that the human brain, in terms of social relationships, cannot handle more than 150 people.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously with a global problem, yeah, tribal. And so, you know, this is an evolutionary argument, of course, which really comes up so often. But I think what I'm getting at is just the way we even talk about these problems, even just traditional conversations, one-on-one conversations, sometimes to me don't feel like enough. We don't even have the tools to make enough progress. Like, I think it's great to bond socially. Speaking in these conversations is great to bond, but when we try to map or make decisions or come up with ideas for these large problems, we need, you know, a concept I really like lately is the second brain. So externalizing our thoughts in the simplest form, writing is an externalization of our thoughts, which is an incredible invention. But AI maybe can take that to the next level. You know, computers have extended it even further. Where, you know, that's why technology is so interesting to me. As many pitfalls as it presents, it's this incredibly interesting, novel capability that we're augmenting onto our brain to potentially solve these problems. So I'm kind of scattered with this, but the intersection of the ecological crisis, I think, could require things like AI to synthesize large data sets and help us deal with complexity, because, you know, I guess we're not designed to deal with complexity. Now that we've created all these pitfalls. That's some of my thoughts.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's that. I mean, even before we imagine generally or super intelligent AI, there's some really awesome like tree planting robots that can plant like thousands of trees per hour, like way more than humans can, and like the quality of the planting is higher and so on. And that's like available right now. And so I think that there certainly are ways in which like technology, including kind of like AI technology, is going to make a kind of pretty near-term impact on the way we can respond to the climate crisis and wider ecological crisis in some quite positive ways. I guess the counter to that, and in some sense, like the elephant in the room, is just resource constraints. there's some pretty harrowing statistics around that, even for the UK to go completely like electric, all electric cars, like producing all of our electricity from solar panels and wind and other renewable resources and so on, electrifying our heating systems and so on. Even that would require like more like rare earth metals than that exist like in all known reserves right now. So like, let alone, you know, the other 200 countries on Earth. So it's almost, it sometimes it feels to me it's like we're at a kind of tightrope phase of humanity where there's like where we are currently like trying to cross this chasm on this narrow rope, like, and the reason for the tightrope is just the severe ecological pressures, resource pressures that we're currently facing. And like, if we can make it across, then yeah, like there's a lot to be hopeful for. For example, in terms of resource constraints, the possibility for AI powered technology to ideally kind of like safely recycle like rare earth metals that are currently in rubbish dumps, or alternatively like safely extract metals from the sea floor, or even if you want to go even further, like mining asteroids and so on. Like it can get a bit like far-fetched, but are we going to get to that? Are we even going to get to that point? Are we going to get to the point where we have the technology that will enable us to then grow our capacity for energy and resources more or less without limit? Like that isn't clear to me, and I think anyone that claims it is clear is probably lying. You know, like it's almost as like what was this? I saw Jonathan Ralston from Perspectiva. You know, some of you might be familiar with Perspectiva and Jonathan. He posted, I think it was him that posted a tweet the other day saying he had just watched. Is the film called Godzilla versus King Kong? I think it's like he was watching it with his 5-year-old kid or something, and he was contemplating, is there a deep meaning behind Godzilla versus King Kong? And he sounded like he couldn't obviously find one in the time that he had watched it, at least, and was like prepared to accept it is just trash. But anyway, it popped into my mind because in a way, like the ecological crisis and AI feel like that Godzilla and King Kong in a way, doesn't it? Just like they both have this quality of just being like hyper objects, or these these exponentials that are almost impossible for like the puny human mind to like wrap their head around. And then it becomes, you know, it's impossible to predict one, let alone the combination of these two things. So then, like, I guess the place I'd like to shift the conversation just in the last minutes then is how do we live? How do we live in this age of hypercomplexity? How do we live in this age where we have become aware, or more of us are becoming aware that like we are living this age of exponentials, you know, not just one but many exponentials, like what can we imagine are like valuable and meaningful ways to live our lives now, knowing that one of almost the only certainty that we have is that our lives are going to be dramatically different in 1 or 5 or 10 or 20 years from now. but in what way we don't know. The only thing we know is that like it isn't going to be like this. So like, yeah, how do we live? Well, how do you all live? How are you all choosing to live, like kind of in that context?
I can start. So I think for me, I'm choosing to see the world, most importantly, to see what's out there, make the fullest of life as it is, and to also try to maintain awareness about the shifts in our society and the world around us, and just do my best to provide contribution. And I think that's just, you can't think too much into the future because we don't know if there's going to be one even, or what it's going to be like. So you have to remain present, stay curious for the varieties of ways that things can change, and yeah, just try our best.
And what do you think the balance, or is there a balance between that curiosity and that staying present with what's happening? Because it feels like there's so much, you know, one could read and could watch, that you could easily just like spend your whole life just trying to keep up with the leading edge of, you know, that curve.
Yeah.
Let alone cooking yourself dinner and, you know, walking the dog and, you know, like having a life kind of outside of that. So how do you balance that, like that need, or that importance to kind of have an awareness of what's happening with just maybe the simpler things in life?
Yeah, I think I mean, that's definitely like personal for each person. That would be different. For me, I guess, you know, I remain quite a generalist and do not dive deep into topics necessarily, unless I feel like there's a real need that it's going to impact my life and the people around me that I can impact with it. So certainly right now, AI is something that I'm more curious about, and not necessarily the ethics of it, because first of all, I don't know how to impact that beyond maybe signing a moratorium or something similar, but being able to use it and understand how it works and using it for the benefit, given it's here, is something that I'm interested in. But yeah, to answer that, I think just intuitively feel into yourself if it's causing you some kind of stress, or you have this kind of like grabbingness of knowledge, then sometimes it's better to, you know, just find presence and not grab.
Nice, thank you. Anyone else got any wisdom they can share with us?
My way is sublimation, I guess. And as you said about the extension, right, of the mind, like writing, or for me, it's also music, definitely, and the very, very, very deep process of grief, and grief and grieving for the green planet, because for me it's yeah, in last past 2 years, it's about trying to keep the balance between the two, between the life and death, basically. I'm in Poland, so war in Ukraine is very close. So this big black hole of what is real is screaming, right? So so I think on the it's that, and listening to a lot of loud and machine based music helps with embracing this, because I cannot only go into utopian thinking. I'm more into we are heading to something very distractful.
Nice, thank you. I was listening to System of a Down the other night for the first time in a long time, and wow, yeah, really released something for me. That's another story. So yeah, Lauren, welcome to the screen as well. And yeah, so Lauren or Dion, I wonder if you how do we live in these strange times?
Hi Stephen, can you hear me okay? I've got some headphones.
Yes.
Okay. I feel like this topic is like super over my head in some ways, that I often stick my head into the sand with it and kind of maybe naively hope that through trying to work on raising my own consciousness and working with communities that are focusing on a similar driver, that will have the kind of ripple effect and spread out and offer the kind of energetic changes that the monks did in that study in Canada, where they influenced the crime rate. So that, I suppose, is my kind of approach. But equally, I suppose I question a lot of things about it in relation to, you know, if we talk about climate change, ultimately, I think it was Nathan who just said at the festival, AI decided to turn itself off because it wasn't helping humanity. But if we use AI to support or help us with climate change, when it realizes we're the problem, is it going to try and turn us off? You know?
Right, very
it's like
good.
the opposite. And equally, another thought I have is, I don't know all the dates. I'm not very good with kind of like the history and the specifics of dates. But if you go back to, like, you know, ancient Egypt, the gods of like the Sumerians, and, you know, even if you look at Atlantis and stuff, there's all of this information around technology and how they were so much more technologically advanced than we are now. And I wonder if they surpassed where we are at with things like artificial intelligence, or used it, and the kind of impact that had within their society, and if that fed into the ultimate demise of, you know, humanity at that age, and if there's kind of like the cycle and the replication. So I don't really think I've offered much apart from more thoughts.
That was great. Yeah, couple of things come to mind. One is there's a complexity scientist, guy called Dave Snowden, who is a Welsh thinker who runs a centre called Canadian Centre, and he said something in a podcast I listened to him recently. He was making the case that, like, the only thing we can do is like the next best thing, and there's a real tendency for like people in this kind of liminal web space, of which, you know, metamodern space, of which Love Yourself is a part, to like go on endless like journeys of abstraction and like trying to figure out like the root cause, or like, you know, if we can just like pour enough brain power into it, then we'll figure it out. And he's like, this is bullshit. And, you know, it's like, okay, fine, there's a place for abstraction, like in a limited form, but in the face of, you know, exponential change and of complex systems, which are in some sense, but, you know, if they're chaotic, at least, like by definition, like unknowable, then like the only thing we can do is the next best thing, which probably looks like helping out your local community, you know, or like looking after your sick mother, or whatever it might be. And that actually aligns with some of the thinking and writing of Charles Eisenstein as well, who writes about contemplating like, when is one action more valuable? I think the example he gives is, you know, if he's invited to speak at a conference, to speak in front of 1,000 people, but, you know, his daughter is sick, like, yeah, you know, which really is, you know, more valuable and more important. And you know, he suggests often, no, yeah, and to go with the intuition that we would all have in a way, of course it's to look after his sick daughter, you know, like, even though that seems smaller in some sense, or in the sense that like the world, social media, capitalism, like wants the lens that those things want us to look through. Like, what are you doing? You could, you know, like scale, like reach, like think of all the likes you could get from delivering that talk. But like, yeah, there's another way of operating, another like set of, you know, values and that we can tune into. And so yeah, thank you for kind of like reminding us of that in the beginning of what you shared. And then in terms of technology, like that, I think it'd be for me, it's a real stretch to imagine that ancient technologies had any kind of like silicon technology, but I've certainly had experiences with psychedelic substances that like I still have no good explanation for, that have been like subjectively incredibly like intricate and complex and beautiful. It's felt like there's been a lot of informational content there, and my mind is definitely open to the possibility that ancient civilizations had kind of like mental technologies, possibly involving plant medicines and or just like, you know, psychedelic medicines of all kinds, and skill with those things far beyond what we have right now. But we like, it's almost laughable the stage we're at with psychedelics, you know, in the mainstream. It's like we're now like, oh, psychedelics could be medicines to treat people with depression and anxiety. It's like, yeah, but have you smoked DMT? Like, there's so much going on there that that obviously we don't understand, that obviously there's like science doesn't have good explanations for right now. That it's very curious that we're still kind of like just treating things like psilocybin and DMT as if it was just like, you know, paracetamol or Prozac or something like this. And sure, on one level, yes, like it can and it will benefit certain people, but like I'm really excited, and we're just entering this phase to get into a phase of like genuine, like, you know, research with psychedelics akin to space travel, of like, okay, let's treat these things not simply as healing, you know, devices, as medicines, and which is important, but like, let's treat them as like rocket ships and like see where they can take us and see whether we can bring things back from the places that we go. And who knows, maybe that well, but then then I think, God, could we handle that, like in the context of ecological crisis and AI, like could we handle like another exponential frontier opening up if it was like, oh, but yeah, we've discovered that we can, you know, there's evidence that we genuinely can communicate with like DMT entities in another dimension. Like, I don't know whether the world can handle that much more craziness. Actually, it makes me think of so apparently like the US government released a report on UFOs like in the last year, basically saying that, yeah, UFOs are real and we've known about this for like 20 years or something like this, and no one cared. And I think part of the reason that no one cared is just like, we're already overwhelmed with like the kind of strangeness of the world, and like coming out of the pandemic probably was part of that. It was like, okay, dude, cool, yeah, UFO, like I'll think about that, you know, next week or something like this. And so yeah, it's yeah, I'm curious. I wonder how much stranger the world could, you know, could even become. Like, is there space for the world to become stranger at this point? Probably. But so let's see. So yeah, Dion, any last words?
Yeah, I had some thoughts earlier, but I don't know, it's just a lot to take in. Yeah, I agree with what you said about psychedelics. I mean, it's, you know, in my experience, the phrase you said, can we bring things back from where we go? I've definitely had that feeling. And you know, I remember myself saying, you know, this could transform society if everyone had a method to safely and, you know, properly experience these things. It could really massively change how people think permanently, as we know about traumatic experiences or addiction, things like that. So yeah, we're still on the frontier of many things, which is positive. So yeah.
Nice one. Thank you. Cool. Okay. Well, I'm personally talked out now. So yeah, what do you reckon, Nathan?
So I actually just had one more question. And this is for us to more to feel into rather than think. And it's so imagine these two potential futures, the one where we go back to the land, we live in the forest, we, you know, work in our deep local community, versus this like highly globalized futuristic future where AI does all of the work for us and we maybe just consume and, you know, live lavishly and everything else is done. Having those two in mind, which one would you feel into would be your preferred choice? Yeah. Stephen, would you like to start?
Impossible for me to there will be, and there are tomorrow, like so many futures that I cannot think about this, that there will be two, and which one I would prefer to live. I have to, and we have to embrace everything. Like because our friend on the other side of the world lives in in the futuristic villa right now, and the other one is living the other future that you said. Like it's two polarities which are happening right now. So we live in the future, basically, if we think about it this way.
Yeah, definitely, great point.
My first instinct, you know, when you asked the question kind of back at me, is like, that small farm future, as another author, Chris Smaje, has called it, and that's heavily cited by Dougald Hine. That I wouldn't like if AI and all of this technology meant that like it became impossible to live that life, then I think I wouldn't want it. But like I guess it's in a way, like in a small way, the reason why I live in Totnes in Devon now. Like, lived in London for many years, like in southwest, in small town in the southwest of England, and like it's great to be able to like to be able to dip in to the city and to like these periods of just like technological abundance, and to get an Uber from here to there, and just like walk into a restaurant and someone's cooks you incredible food, and like but if living that way meant that I couldn't, as I do here, like go and just swim in the sea, or cycle my bike around Dartmoor, or like put my hands into the earth at like the local community garden project, then that would be a problem for me. So and yeah, it's strange actually almost to hear myself say that, but I think, but I guess it feels important now that I do, and just makes me think of just how important it is for us to be able to switch this stuff off in a way. and maybe even at least even when we enter if we enter a kind of like AI powered like super abundant future, maybe like we intentionally choose that like we don't get any help from machines on weekends or something like this. Just to give us all a chance to like remember what it's like to provide for ourselves, and to be tuned into the simpler things in life. So yeah, AI free weekends. I'm going to start campaigning for that, I think.
What about you, Dion?
Yeah, I resist the desire to choose one over the other. I'm hesitant I don't want to sound like a techno optimist, but I believe we can synthesize these two worlds, and that technology can be redesigned to be unobtrusive, and that it can be in the background taking care of essential services while allowing us to immerse. I have a beautiful open space near me of right now in this spring. It's just this vibrant green, and you can smell the humidity, and just walking through this space is a magical experience. But I also am aware of, I have a limitation of working memory, and I'm a person with a lot of ideas and questions, and I may not remember everything. And so, I bring a notebook along, but I can't help but think of future technologies that can, digital technologies that can help me collect and synthesize ideas, and even just identifying plants along my walk. I have an app on my phone that lets me identify plants, and that enhances my experience, actually makes me more present in the ecosystem. So I think there's strong arguments for a synthesis of these both of these worlds.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I love that. I think I can resonate with that as well, for sure. I do, however, feel that a lot of the technologies that we've created so far are almost a disenfranchisement from our innate selves as who we are as human beings. And like, as you said, Stephen, about getting your hands in the soil and those experiences. And I totally agree with both you, Dion and Kinga, like we can do both of those for sure. But I definitely recognize that even things like social media, which were, designed to make us more connected, has perhaps left us more disconnected than ever. I mean, you could say that us having this experience now is connecting us, and it is from afar, but I'm sure there's someone down the road from me that I could be talking to who would be interesting and I could have a real deep connection with. So yeah, I think it's interesting to think about those two as opposites, and of course it will never happen. There will always be a combination of both, but yeah, I very much value the small farm future, which is where I'll be heading when I hang up my boots and stop traveling.
Very good. Well, it's lovely down in Totnes in Devon. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm a big fan. I've been looking. Yeah, I've been looking.
Yeah.
Especially because I'd love to go to Schumacher and study the regenerative agriculture course.
Oh, great. Yeah. Nice. I think I'm going to be starting a permaculture design course on the Dartington estate from September.
Oh, amazing.
Myself. So yeah,
awesome.
no, it's definitely, I've got a lot to learn in that area for sure. Yeah, much more familiar and skilled with all the technology than silicon technology than biological technology at this point. So you've got some work to do.
I'll probably be down there in the summer, so I'll come and hit you up.
Nice, great.